Do you think foundation paper piecing wastes a lot of fabric? Well, let me show you my method for cutting that leaves very little fabric behind. Hi there, my name is Irene and you are watching the Sugaridoo channel, my happy place where I share tips and tricks on quilting and especially foundation paper piecing, because that's kind of my superpower. Today we're discussing cutting fabrics for foundation paper piecing, and I'm also sharing tips on how I cut and use directional fabrics. I've seen tutorials on foundation paper piecing where they just cut a square and use that as a piece for piecing the fabric. So I kind of understand where the thought that foundation paper piecing wastes fabric comes from. Some people mention that when I say that I like foundation paper piecing, but it doesn't have to be that way. When I was a little girl, my mom already taught me that you should take note on how you cut your fabrics. So she made sure that I never started cutting in the middle of my fabric, and that you should measure and then cut. So maybe that's why I'm hesitant of doing fuzzy cutting because I always can hear my mom say, don't cut in the center of your fabric. But however, I'm convinced that you can do foundation paper piecing with very little wasted fabric. And in this video I'm going to show you how. The only thing you need is a little patience, and I'm going to tell you more about that in a sec. First of all, a little recap on what project I'm working on. 2 weeks ago I did a video on the Sugaridoo Sampler, this one, and I shared the story behind it, and last week I made a video about picking fabrics for my new project. I'm going to make this little quilt, and so I picked out my fabric, this lovely bundle, and today is the day that I'm going to start cutting it. So the pattern that I'm making is I Love My Bike, and that is available in my webshop. And the blocks are both also available in the Sugaridoo Sampler. So if you already have that, you're all set to go. Okay, so not wasting fabric. I guess the only thing I do is add an extra step in my process. When I print my pattern on a tea bag paper, then I also print a pattern on normal printing paper. And the pattern that I print on normal printing paper, I'm going to use as templates for my fabric. That's all. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do it, and I kind of puzzle all those pieces. And when you take that extra step, you don't have to cut big chunks of fabric, you don't have to eyeball it, so that makes you waste less fabric. So first thing before I can start cutting is that I printed a coloring page from the pattern, and I'm going to mark which colors of fabrics will go where. So at this stage I'm just quickly deciding which bike I'm going to make in which color fabric, and then I'm going to make 2 yellow hearts and 1 pink and 1 turquoise or teal, so that I know a little bit which pieces are going to go where. So now it's time to take my pieces for the templates and start cutting those up. But before I can do that, I need to mark on there which pieces will be which, because when I've cut them up I won't be able to tell exactly what is what. The background is going to be gray, and I'm just going to leave that white because I know which color that is going to be. And I'm only going to make one set, so I'm coloring them in for both bikes, because I can just flip the template pieces even though they are mirrored the bike. That doesn't really matter. I'm just going to flip the pieces and can use them for both bikes. And when I'm going to use directional fabric like this one, it has a direction in it, and when I'm going to use that on the frame of the bike, I don't want to have that in a random direction, so I'm going to mark that on my template so that I know how to cut it. And the way I'm going to do that is to decide on a direction. So I want the sprinkles to go in this direction and in this direction and in this direction. So then I will just mark stripes on here, which will then need to go in the direction of my directional fabric. So let's start by cutting this piece. Here I have my pattern piece, and here I have my extra printed pattern for the template. And this is the tire of the fabric. So this is going to be in light gray, and the white is the dark gray background. So first I'm going to cut up this piece with my paper scissors. And I'm already going to separate the two colors from each other. So this is going to be the dark gray, and here we have the lighter gray. And this piece is also dark gray. Okay, so let's cut the dark gray first. Here I have my fabric. And now all I do is place and puzzle my template pieces on my fabric so that I can cut out roughly around it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you're new to foundation paper piecing and just want to make it easy for yourself, cut a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. Because cutting only a 1/4 inch will make it a little bit harder for you when you're doing the foundation paper piecing. So I'm always cutting a little bit extra just to be on the safe side and make it easier for me while I'm piecing. So yeah, it's just kind of a puzzle to place these and to cut around them without leaving a lot of wasted fabric. There we go. And I'm just leaving the template pieces on top of the fabric, and that makes it easy for me to stack them later on. I'll show you what I mean with that. And another little trick, since I'm working with a solid fabric here, it doesn't matter if I'm placing my pattern piece like this or like this. So I can go both ways to see where I can place it to cut it the most efficient way. There we go. I do like to go around it when it has a little bit of an odd shape, because when the outline of the fabric is following the shape of the template, that makes piecing this on your tea bag paper a lot easier. So here are my first scraps of fabric. I'm leaving this there. So now it's time to do these pieces from light gray fabric, and this one does have a print on it, so I need to make sure that I'm placing my template pieces with the right side up on the back side of my fabric. So this is the right side of my fabric, so I'm placing the template pieces on the back side of my fabric. Okay, so now I've cut all my pieces. I'll just take my pattern piece and I'll stack all the fabrics on top of each other. So I start with number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then I'll flip this, place it on top of my pattern piece, and then when I start sewing I can just take this to my sewing machine And then I know, oh, let's start with piece 1 and 2. So this is piece 1 and this is piece 2, and I can start sewing right away. So that's a lovely way to work in batches. So now I can cut everything and then stack it. So let me show you one more to demonstrate what I'm going to do with the lines that I put on for my directional pieces. So I'm going to cut the teal bike. So I'm going to have this fabric and these two. The area A2 is going to be dark gray. So let's first cut this up. And then let's see, these two need to be from the light fabric and this one is from the medium. There we go. So this fabric has a direction and I wanted to go the stripes to follow the lines that I drew on my pattern piece. So what I'm just going to do is place this template and line my black lines up with my white dotted lines that you can also see through the fabric to the other side. See, so I'm not going to place it in this direction, but I'm going to let the white dotted lines follow the black stripes that I draw. This is also a directional fabric, but I didn't draw any directions on my piece. But as I see now, it might be nice to do that. So this piece is this little one over here. So the lines that I need. Okay, so then I just need to make sure that my fabric is following in this direction. So otherwise I might have popped it in a different direction, but now I know I want these black lines to follow the lines in my fabric. There we go. And that are all the pieces for this block. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there we have it. That are all the pieces for this section. So that is how I cut my fabrics. I'll just puzzle all the template pieces to not waste any fabric. So I'm not cutting too big around it, but I do add a little bit more than a 1/4 inch seam allowance because that just makes piecing a lot easier. And they also show you how I make use of the direction of my fabric while still using template pieces. Now it's time for me to cut all the other pieces and get ready to start piecing. So if you also want to make this mini quilt with me, you can get the pattern in my web shop. It's called I Love My Bike. And in a few weeks you will see me finish this quilt and start quilting it. Next week's video, by the way, is a very special one. I'm going to announce the Sugaridoo Banana Quilt Along. I'm going to share all the information about it. I'm super excited about that. So if you want to know more about the Sugaridoo Banana Quilt Along, make sure to watch it next week. Same time, same channel. So I'm going to finish cutting everything and wishing you a wonderful week. And I hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Bye!